right, so how's everybody doing tonight? All right, sweet. All right, so as Dan said, I'm Katie, and I'm one of the youth interns here at Life Church this year, and I am new to 621. And for a lot of you, I just started working with you this September, and most of you I haven't even had the pleasure of meeting. So I understand what it is like to be at 621 for the very first time, and what it is like to be the new kid around. So on top of introducing myself in just a second, I also want to extend a special welcome to all of you who are here for the very first time. So that means our first-time people that were just introduced. We're so excited that you're here, and we're happy that you've come out tonight and that you're trying something new. All right, so to do a quick recap on what Steve talked about last week, Steve talked about how making peace was greater than making your point. And today what I'm going to be talking about is how anger can be good when it is used correctly. And so in case you missed Steve's sermon last week, it actually is posted up on our Life Students Facebook page, which is what Dan said in the announcements. And so if you're not a part of the Life Students Facebook page, we would really love to have you be connected with that. And if you need help getting access to that, you can go on out to the Welcome Center after small groups, and the people out there who run it would love to help you get connected. All right, so I am the fourth of 6 kids, and I think we have a picture. Yep, so up on the screen is a picture of me and my 5 other siblings, and I'd like to take just a quick moment to introduce them to you tonight, starting on the very far left. So on the very far left, we have my brother Jason, and Jason is actually the second born. So this picture is done in height order. And so Jason is the second born. He's 26. He's happily married and has 3 really, really cute kids. So I'm a very, very biased and proud aunt. Next is Josh. He's the third in line, and he's 24. And Josh is one of those guys that you could spend the entire day with and never grow bored, even if you spent the entire time reading on a couch. He's just amazing to hang around. And then next is Kristen, and she is the one in the yellow scarf, and she is also married as well. But even though she is married, that doesn't mean that it stopped her from being the boss of our family. So she loves that a lot. And then next is Elizabeth, and she is the 5th born, which means she is younger than me. And even though she is taller than me, that doesn't mean that she won't always be my baby sister in my heart. And then next is Elena, who is actually here for the very first time. And yeah, so she decided to come out and try 621 tonight and, hopefully support me. But she might not like this next sentence because Elena is the baby of our family, and she absolutely loves being the baby of the family. She's totally humiliated right now, and I love it. And she totally takes advantage of the fact that she has 5 adult siblings who love to buy her things like Starbucks and Panera and do all those kinds of stuff. All right, and then last is me, and obviously I'm Katie. I'm 22, and I'm also the very shortest of my family, which means on more than one occasion, I can be seen wearing hand-me-down clothing from all of my siblings because I am the shortest. So thankfully tonight, this is my own clothing, but yeah. All right, so that's my siblings and I, and we are very best friends. We love each other, and there is not many things that we wouldn't do for each other. But for a couple of us, this hasn't always been true. And so next, I want to show you a picture of me and my brother Jason. This was us last year. And Jason and I are 3 years apart. And from about the age that I was 5 to about 15, me and Jason were always angry at each other. And we would spend each day arguing and allowing our anger to get the better of us. And so it was almost as if our life goal was to ruin the other person. We would just constantly do things to anger the other person. And I remember when I was about 10 that my brother had his favorite CD playing, because when I was growing up, we didn't have iPods that we could listen to, so we had to, whoever wanted to listen to music, we all listened to it. And my brother was listening to his favorite CD, and I didn't like it. And that day, I had asked him to turn off the CD, and he told me no. And immediately, all There was all sorts of emotions that flooded in, and anger was one of those emotions, and I acted out in that anger. And I walked over to the CD player, and I took that CD out, and I cracked it in half, which ensured that my brother would never listen to that CD again. And so a couple of you laughed, and thankfully, me and my brother actually do laugh about that moment, so it's okay. But that doesn't mean that it's actually something that we should be laughing about. Because even though the anger and my brother had towards each other was uncontrollable, what breaks my heart is knowing that we are not the only ones who have a problem with anger. And today, we are talking about our response to anger. Because the bottom line is that anger can be good when it is used correctly. And Proverbs 29:11 tells us that fools give vent to their rage, but the wise bring calm in the end. Anger is something that is extremely prevalent in our culture today. If I was to pick any two of you here tonight, and I was to put you in one of the rooms upstairs, chances are you guys would grow angry at each other at some point, because anger is built into our society. So what is all of this anger leading to? And the answer is actually really simple. It's leading to broken relationships. Because once a relationship is broken, that leads to bitterness. And once bitterness sets into your heart, it rots it. And once you have a rotten heart, that is no foundation for any relationship. And so each time my brother and I grew increasingly angry at each other, that would place another small fracture in our non-existent relationship that the two of us had. And as sad as it is to say today, there are not many moments from my childhood where my brother and I weren't angry at each other. And what almost made it worse that my brother and I were constantly angry at each other was that I never felt bad for acting out in my anger. I never felt bad for the anger and the pain I inflicted on the people around me. And if I did apologize for that anger that I had, I usually didn't mean it. And my apology was not sincere. But thankfully, the relationship between Jason and I doesn't end there, because there was always hope. And that was something that Jason kept alive. And the way Jason kept hope alive in our relationship was by laying his pride aside and offering a sincere apology for the part he had to play. And now Jason apologizing did not mean that the very next day or the next hour he wouldn't get angry at me, because he definitely did, even after apologizing. But by apologizing, he was letting go of the past, and he was keeping himself from all the pain and the bitterness that it was causing me. And the thing is that when anger is actually dealt with biblically, it can deepen your relationship. And just like Jason handling his anger better, that's what kept the hope alive in our relationship. Because the thing is that your anger is inevitable. We will all get angry. But your response to anger, when it happens to you, is what can keep you out of danger. And now the Bible has many great passages that talk about anger. And that's why I've chosen to focus on Proverbs 29:11 that says, "Fools give vent to their rage, but the wise bring calm in the end." And now if you look at this verse up on the screen, it might seem really short, and it actually is a short verse. But if you take a moment to pause, and allow that verse to sink into your heart, it actually becomes more and more complex the longer you pause. And the complexity of that verse is what actually made it so hard for me to apply it to my life. And it took me many years to apply this verse to my life. And now I wish I could stand up here and tell you today that I am the only one who has an anger problem. That I am the only one who acts out in my rage. That I am the only one who inflicts pain and has dozens of broken relationships. But unfortunately, I'm not the only one, because our culture has gotten it wrong for so many years. And if you look around and you talk to other people, there are more than enough broken relationships to prove that point. And the biggest problem, I believe, why our culture is still getting our anger wrong is because we have this belief deep down in our core that there is no good form of anger. But that's not true, because anger can be good when it is used correctly. Unfortunately, like everything that God has created, we humans have figured out a way to destroy that good thing. But anger, in the form God created it, is actually a gift. And today I'd like to dive in and try and unpack this complex verse for you so that you can start applying this verse in your daily life. Because the truth is that God does have a purpose for anger, and that anger does belong in your life. Like I said earlier, there's many verses that talk about anger. And if you flip to almost any book of the Bible, you can read about men, women, and even Jesus growing angry. And as I started reading through the Bible as a new believer, I started to pick up on these two extremes that I would like to share with you tonight. So on one hand, I read in Psalm 7, where it talks about how God is our ultimate judge, yet he is actually angered every single day. And some of the things that actually anger God are injustices to other people. There's many other things that do anger him, but that is one of the big things that continues to cause God to be angry. And then on the other side, on the other extreme, we have Exodus 34, where it says that God is slow to anger. And so as I was a new believer and I was reading through these two passages and I picked up on these two extremes, I tried to figure out how I could balance both of these sides in my life. How could I be angry every day, but how could I also be slow to my anger at the same time? And slowly I started to realize that if I believed that God is perfect and that God never sins, then neither of these extremes are actually bad. And so I started to look not to balance these extremes, but to incorporate these extremes into my life. And I started to look to incorporate these into my life so that I could start managing my anger better. So we see on the one hand that God is angered every single day, which, like I said, isn't the problem. The problem is that we give way to our anger in a bad way. And just like the first part of Proverbs 29:11 says, it says that fools give vent to their rage. And basically that means acting upon the impulse that the emotions that from anger, that the emotions that anger causes. And so some people act out on that impulse in various different ways. So some people like to yell. We all know people who like to yell. We all know people who like to throw things across a room. We all know people who sadly will become physically abusive with other people. Or there's some people where they actually grow increasingly quiet, and then they start stuffing all those emotions inside. And then later on, they become incredibly passive-aggressive with you, and you're wondering why they're throwing these little bits of anger at you. So if we're not supposed to be foolish with our anger, how can we be wise in our anger? So there's a couple of things that you can do to be wise in your anger. And the first thing that you can remember to do to be wise about your anger is to take a moment to pause and a moment to pray. And when you pray, you can invite God into that situation that you're handling and that you're trying to deal with. And you can invite him onto that battlefield. And as you pray, that will give you a moment to pause. And by pausing, that will allow your emotions to actually cool down, and you will be able to handle that situation more appropriately. And the second thing you can actually do is something I do a lot. When I'm hungry, I get really, really angry. And there's actually a term that Snickers uses, I think called hangry or something. And that happens to me like all too often. So if you find yourself in that situation, you can actually take a moment to grab a granola bar or some Cheetos or whatever it is that you like. And just take a moment to eat, and that will actually help the situation. And then another thing that you can do is you can actually talk to that other person that you're having a problem with, and you can ask them to speak about this at a more appropriate time. Because if you're smart about how you handle your anger, then there will be calm in the end. All right, so I have a question for you guys tonight. I think we have a slide with it. But how many of you guys have seen this movie Inside Out? Raise your hand. Yeah. It is a really, really cute movie. Yeah. And I love this movie. And what I love most about this movie, not just the little adorable characters, but what I love most about this movie is that it got all of us to talk about our emotions. And I'm not just talking about the good emotions like love and joy and happiness. I'm talking emotions like fear and anger. Because I don't know about you, but there's not many of us where we would walk down the hallways at school and talk about how we were fearful that morning, or about how maybe our parents had angered us that morning. But the reality is that God created all of these emotions. And each of these emotions has a distinct place in our life. Some of these emotions definitely show up a lot more. But that does not mean that the other emotions do not have a place in our life. Because you see, God gave us a toolbox. And inside that toolbox are all of the emotions that He created. And if you think for a moment about a real toolbox, you could find things like a screwdriver or a wrench. And now both of these things have a very distinct purpose, but it is up to you to manage them correctly, because they cannot manage themselves. And so anger, like all the other emotions that are inside God's toolbox, must be managed correctly, or it will manage you. And now acting upon your anger and allowing it to control you is like trying to use a Phillips screwdriver into a flat screw. It just does not work. And usually you end up walking away from that situation trying to make it better, but you've actually made it worse, and typically sometimes things can get broken. So when is it appropriate to use your anger? Because as a new believer, I read through some of these scriptures that I shared with you today, and I heavily judged myself. And I felt like such a sinner for all the anger and the bitterness that I had inside of my heart. But what I didn't know was when it was appropriate to remove that tool from the toolbox and use it correctly. I had no idea when in a situation I could walk over to that toolbox and take it out and use it. But there is such a thing as righteous anger. And that's what we've seen portrayed for us by Jesus in the book of Matthew. And in the book of Matthew, there's this story where Jesus walks into the synagogue, which is a place of worship, and he sees people buying and selling various items. And the sight of people defiling his house of worship causes Jesus to become increasingly angry, and he ends up going into the synagogue and driving out all the people who were buying and selling things. He went in there and he flipped over tables and he got all of them to leave. This is another situation of something that angers God every day. And so, like I mentioned before, something that angers God every single day is injustices to other people. And one of those injustices to other people is something that happens every single day in our culture. And that is bullying. Because bullying, whether or not you've been bullied, you've definitely seen somebody else who has been bullying. And it's hard to watch. And it's hard to be the one who's being bullied. And now immediately once you see bullying, a lot of people can start to act out in their anger and allow their anger to become better. But the thing is that you have to remember to be wise in that situation. So if you see someone who is being bullied, remember to be wise and to take the appropriate measures. So you can talk to your coach or your principal or the teacher and ask them to get involved. Because in the end, if the appropriate measures are taken, you will see calm happen. So what can you do now, starting today and tomorrow, to manage your anger in a biblical manner? So I have 4 things I would like to share with you guys today. But before I share them, I don't want you guys to worry about all 4 of them today. You can go ahead and write down all 4 of them. But I want you guys to just pick one thing for this week or for this month. Because anger is a big problem, and it does take a little bit to try and figure out how to manage it. So just pick that one thing. And as you go about picking that one thing, invite God onto your battlefield. Pray and ask for his help. And I know he will show up, and he will help you begin to manage your anger. So the first thing I want you to do is to be honest and to speak. We are not mind readers. As awesome and amazing as it would be to have that superpower where I could look through this room and see all of your thoughts, the superpower doesn't exist. And there's been many times when I've finally been honest and spoken about what I was feeling inside, and the person on the other end said, I had no idea you felt this way. And that's true because we're not mind readers. So be honest and speak up. And when you do speak what you have to say in love, even if it's hard to say. The second thing I have is that I want you to stay current. I want you to keep your problems current. I don't want you to let them so many days continue to pass, and then soon enough it's a week, and then it's a month, and you no longer want to address that issue. So keep your problems current. And this was something I saw my brother do almost every single day. And there's this verse in Ephesians, I think it's Ephesians 4:26, that says, do not let the sun go down on your anger. And there were so many nights after me and my brother would get angry at each other that he would come knocking on our bedroom door after me and my sisters would go to bed, and he would offer a sincere apology because he didn't want to go to bed angry. And if you allow what is bothering you to build up, it will become worse. So deal with the problem as quickly as you can. And the third thing I want you to do is to attack your problem, not the other person. Even if what you have to say is true about that person, don't say it. It will not make the situation any better. And soon enough, you start attacking that person, and then that person starts attacking you, and it becomes this little mini attacking war. And then the problem is completely forgotten. And neither of you remember what you were even arguing or angry about. So take that emotion that you have, that anger causes, and focus it on attacking the problem at hand, not the other person. And the last thing I want you to do is I want you to act, not react about the problem. And because we are fallen people, and because we do sin, our first reaction is often a sinful one. It's not one that we need to follow through on. So if you feel that emotion immediately pop in your head and you have that idea of, I want to do this to get back at that person, that is not a smart idea. And it is not good to act upon that impulse and instead take that emotion, like I said before, to focus it on attacking the problem at hand. So if you have been sitting here tonight, and maybe you're hearing me talk about anger, and you have this name that came to mind, or a person that came to mind, and you're thinking, I have an issue with this problem, or an issue with this person, I want you to know tonight that it is not too late to start fixing that relationship. Because it is never too late to start fixing that broken relationship. You can lay your pride aside and be the one to apologize. Don't continue to pretend like that problem didn't exist. And if we all took steps to manage our anger in a better way and to attack the problem at hand, we would all still be broken, but we would all still be broken together. Because nothing strengthens a relationship more than walking through that argument with your friend and making it to the other side. So remember that your anger can be good when it is used correctly. And the ways that you can use your anger correctly are by being honest and speaking. You can stay current with your problems, and you can attack your problems, not the other person, and then you can act, not react about the problem. So if you let go of all the harmful emotions that anger causes, and instead ask God to use your anger instead of allowing your anger to use you.